The twin suns of Vareth Prime burned hot over the city of Craven's Spire. The streets were filled with the noise of clanging gates, shouting merchants, and the growl of alien war beasts. In the center of the city stood the Grand Arena, a massive stone circle built by the Cardoon Empire to display their power. Today, the arena was not for battles. Today, it was for the slave auction. Dozens of cages lined the sandy floor. Inside them stood prisoners from many worlds, reptilian warriors from Drask, four-armed miners from Vukar, and tall, insect-like scouts from Zelra. But the smallest cage, near the center, held a single human. His name was Jace Rourke. Chains bound his wrists, and a bruise darkened the left side of his face. His shirt was torn and dust covered his skin, but his back was straight, and his eyes burned with quiet defiance. He had been captured 3 weeks ago during a skirmish on the human colony of New Denver. Most humans captured by the Cardoon were sent straight to the mines or labor camps, but Jace's fate was different. The Cardoon thought it amusing to display him as a rare prize. The auctioneer, a fat Cardoon officer with armor plates along his neck, raised his voice. "Here we have a human, one of the last of their kind in this sector. Fragile, weak, short-lived, but clever. And sometimes, cleverness has its uses." Laughter echoed around the arena stands. Warlords, mercenaries, and nobles sat in rows, all from different alien races, all here to buy fighters, workers, or trophies. A Drask general leaned forward. "Humans, they break too easily," a Vukar noble spat. "The only thing humans are good for is dying fast." Jace's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent. He had no weapon, no plan. Not yet. The auctioneer waved toward him. "We start the bid at—" A voice cut through the noise. "Strong, clear, commanding. That one is mine." The arena went silent. Heads turned toward the speaker. She stood tall. In the front row, Commander Sira Valen of the Valari Sovereignty. Her armor was a deep silver, marked with golden lines that shimmered in the sunlight. A long, curved blade rested at her side, and her blue eyes were sharp enough to cut stone. "The auctioneer frowned. "Commander Velan, perhaps you wish to see the other fighters first?" "I've seen enough," she said. Her voice was calm, but left no space for argument. She raised her hand and pointed directly at Jace. "That one is mine." The crowd murmured in confusion. A Valari elite claiming a human? Impossible. The Drask general laughed. "A Valari commander choosing a human over a Drask gladiator? What next? Will you start training kittens to fight?" Syra didn't even glance at him. "Name your price," she told the auctioneer. The Cardoon officer hesitated. The Valari Sovereignty was not an enemy of the Cardoon, but they were not allies either. Still, refusing a direct request from a Valari commander was risky. 500 Imperial marks, the officer said at last. Without breaking eye contact, Syra tossed him a credit chip. "Done." The gatekeeper opened Jace's cage. Chains clinked as they unlocked his wrists. Jace stepped out slowly, his mind racing. Why would a Valari, a member of one of the most disciplined and proud warrior races in the galaxy, buy him? He had no value here. 2 Valari guards approached, ready to escort him. Sarah looked him over once, as if measuring his worth. "You will follow me. Do not speak unless I tell you to." Jace met her gaze. "And if I refuse?" A faint smile touched her lips. "Then I leave you here for the Cardoon, and you already know what they will do to you." He didn't answer, but he walked. The Spear of Dawn was unlike any ship Jace had seen before. Sleek, silver, and shaped like a blade ready to strike, it floated above the city like a predator waiting for prey. Inside, everything was clean and orderly. Valari discipline was obvious in every corridor. Soldiers in matching armor passed, by without speaking, their boots clicking against the polished metal floors. Syra led Jace to a small room with a bed, table, and water basin. It wasn't a cell. No locks, no bars. "This will be yours," she said. Jace frowned. "Not much of a prison." "It's not a prison," Syra replied. "You are under my protection now. No one on this ship will harm you." "Why?" Jace asked. "Why me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned to leave. "Rest. We speak tomorrow." The door slid shut behind her. Jace didn't rest. He paced. Something about this didn't make sense. In the arena, she could have chosen any fighter. Strong, skilled, dangerous. Instead, she chose him. A human. And she'd paid a high price to do it. That night, he barely slept. The next morning, he was taken to the training hall. Syra was there, dressed not in ceremonial armor but in a lighter combat suit. Around her stood several Valari warriors, each taller and stronger than Jace by a full head. "We are going to test you," Syra said simply. Jace crossed his arms. "Test me for what?" "To see if you are worth the trouble." One of the Valari guards stepped forward. "Training blade," Syra ordered. A wooden practice sword was tossed to Jace. It felt light in his hands. The first opponent stepped in, a Valari warrior with silver skin and black tattoos down his arms. He attacked fast, but Jace's reflexes kicked in. He sidestepped, blocked, and ducked under a heavy swing. The Valari were powerful, but they fought with a certain pattern. Strikes, blocks, precise movements. Jace didn't fight that way. Instead, he fought dirty. He used the flat of his blade to push his opponent off balance, kicked at his knee, and swept the blade upward in a quick, unexpected strike. The warrior stumbled back. Syra's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but interest. Another opponent came forward. This time, Jace didn't wait for the first strike. He lunged, rolled, and grabbed a loose piece of training mat, throwing it toward the warrior's face. It wasn't enough to blind him, but it was enough to distract him. Jace struck again, forcing the warrior back toward the wall. When the match ended, the room was silent except for heavy breathing. Syra stepped forward. "You are untrained, undisciplined, but unpredictable. You think differently." Jace lowered his weapon. "That's called improvising. Humans do it when we don't have a plan." She tilted her head. "The Cardoon fear what they cannot predict. That is why they will try to destroy you." Jace gave a small, humorless smile. "They've been trying for years." For the first time since he'd met her, Syra's voice softened. "Then maybe it's time someone helped you fight back." That night, Jace sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the wall. He still didn't understand her full plan, but one thing was clear. She had chosen him for a reason. The next morning began with the sound of boots on metal floors. Valari soldiers moved through the corridors of the Spear of Dawn like flowing water. Silent, controlled, efficient. Jace Rourke followed Commander Syra Veylan through the ship's main hall. His eyes scanned the alien architecture, smooth walls of silver alloy, glowing panels set into the floor, and banners displaying the Valari crest, a golden sun pierced by a spear. They stopped at a wide door that slid open without a sound. Inside was a room unlike the rest of the ship. Large windows looked out into the endless black of space, and a massive holographic table glowed in the center. Around it stood Valari officers, each studying tactical maps of star systems. Syra motioned for Jace to wait by the wall as she joined the officers. They spoke in their own language, a sharp, clipped tongue that Jace couldn't follow. He caught only fragments in Galactic Common, Cardoon Fleet, supply lines, human colonies. After several minutes, the officers left, leaving Jace alone. With Syra. "You were listening," she said without looking at him. "I heard my people mentioned," Jace replied. Not hard to guess the rest. Syra finally turned. The Cardoon are preparing to move against the last free human colonies in this sector. If they succeed, your species will be erased here. Jace leaned against the wall. And you care why? For a moment her gaze sharpened. Because I have fought the Cardoon for years. I know what they do to worlds. The Valari may hold them at our borders, but we cannot save every race. Most species we encounter, they break, they bow, they obey. Her eyes met his. Humans don't. Jace almost laughed. You're wrong. Plenty of humans break. Plenty obey. Perhaps, she said, but even the weakest of your kind fight longer than most. That makes you dangerous to the Cardoon and valuable to me. The next days were filled with tests. Jace was brought to the training hall again, but this time, it wasn't just sparring. Syra gave him puzzles, broken weapons to repair, unfamiliar machinery to figure out, combat simulations where the rules changed halfway through. The Valari warriors watched in silence as Jace adapted to each challenge. Sometimes he failed, sometimes he succeeded, but he never stopped trying, and he never repeated the same mistake twice. One afternoon, Syra gave him a set of tools and a damaged blaster rifle. You have 10 minutes. Make it work. Jace turned, the weapon over, noting the cracked barrel and missing power cell. In his mind, he saw the rifles humans used back home. Simpler, sturdier, but based on similar principles. He worked quickly, stripping the blaster down to its components, replacing the cracked barrel with a shortened section of reinforced pipe he'd found on the floor and cannibalizing a small power unit from the overhead lighting panel. 9 minutes later, he handed it back to her. Syra checked the modifications, aimed at the far wall, and fired. A clean blue bolt shot out, striking the target dead center. She lowered the weapon. Good. You think like a Valari veteran, or perhaps better. Jace shrugged. Humans call it fixing things with whatever's lying around. That evening, Jace was invited to eat with the crew for the first time. The Valari dining hall was quiet compared to human mess halls. Soldiers spoke in low tones, their discipline even here. Jace sat at the far end of the table, eating the unfamiliar but surprisingly good Valari food. Thin cuts of roasted meat, spiced roots, and a warm broth that reminded him vaguely of home. A tall Valari named Tavor sat beside him. You fight strangely, he said without looking up from his plate. That's one way to say I fight dirty, Jace replied. Tavor nodded. Perhaps dirty is what we need. The Cardoon know our ways too well. Jace looked at him. And you trust me? No, Tavor said simply. But Commander Valan does. That is enough for now. 2 days later, the first test outside the ship came. A Cardoon raiding party had been spotted near the asteroid belt of Ravex 9, harassing civilian transports. Syra ordered the Spear of Dawn to intercept. Jace stood on the bridge, watching the Valari crew work in perfect coordination. The stars outside shifted as the ship's engines roared to life. Battle stations, Syra commanded. Prepare for boarding. When the Valari ship reached the raiders, the fight was fast and brutal. The Spear of Dawn disabled the enemy vessel with precise strikes, then locked on with magnetic clamps. Syra turned to Jace. You're coming with me. They boarded the raider through a breach in its hull. Cardoon warriors were already waiting, tall, armored, and snarling through their breathing masks. Valari blades clashed with Cardoon axes, and the air filled with the sounds of metal on metal. Jace ducked behind a support beam, scanning the chaos. He spotted a Cardoon archer on a high platform, aiming at Syra's unguarded back. Without thinking, Jace grabbed a loose cargo strap from the floor, swung it upward, and hooked it around. The archer's ankle. One hard yank sent the alien crashing down. Syra spun, her blade slicing through another attacker. She caught Jace's eye and gave a quick nod, the closest thing to thanks he'd ever seen from her. The fight ended quickly after that. The raiders were defeated, their weapons seized, and their prisoners freed. Back on the Spear of Dawn, Jace found himself standing outside the medbay. Inside, the freed civilians, not just Valari, but species from across the sector, were being treated. A small insectoid child approached him, clicking softly in its own language. It held out a piece of cloth, a torn scrap from his shirt. During the battle, Jace took it, unsure what to say. Syra came up beside him. "They are alive because of you," he shook his head. "They're alive because of your ship." "No," she said firmly. "The Cardoon adapt quickly, but they cannot adapt to you, not yet." That night, Syra finally told him the truth. In her quarters, lit only by the faint glow of the stars outside, she poured 2 cups of a clear, strong-smelling Valari drink. "There is an old prophecy among my people," she began. "It speaks of a time when the Cardoon will grow so strong that no single army can stop them. It says, when the smallest flame burns brighter than the sun, the empire will fall." Jace frowned. "You think that means humans?" "I think it means something small, unexpected, will rise against them, something they will not see coming." She studied him. "Perhaps you are that flame, or perhaps you will light it in others." Jace leaned back, staring at the stars. "I'm not a hero, Commander. I'm just trying to survive." Her gaze softened, just slightly. "Survival is the first step to victory." As the ship drifted through the quiet between the stars, Jace felt something change inside him. He still didn't fully trust her. He still didn't know if he could believe in prophecies, but for the first time since his capture, he felt the smallest spark of something dangerous. Hope. 3 days passed since the raid on the Cardoon raiders. The Spear of Dawn sailed through deep space, far from trade routes, moving quietly under stealth systems. Commander Sira Velan stood on the bridge, hands behind her back, eyes fixed on the stars. Beside her, Jace Rourke scanned the tactical displays. He was still learning to read Valeri symbols, but he had started to recognize certain ones. Weapons, shields, engines. It was almost peaceful. Almost. Then the alarm started. A sharp, urgent tone cut through the bridge. The holographic display lit up with flashing red symbols. Taver, the tall Valerie officer, turned quickly. "Unknown vessel approaching. No transponder. Speed increasing." Syra's voice was calm but sharp. "Shields up. Prepare for evasive maneuvers." Jace leaned forward. "Cardoon?" Taver glanced at him, then at Syra. "Too small for a warship. But fast. Too fast for a cargo vessel." Jace felt a cold knot in his stomach. "Could be assassins." Syra didn't answer. She didn't have to. The enemy ship appeared on the main display. A black, angular craft with glowing red lines along its hull. Jace had never seen one before, but everything about it screamed danger. Before the Spear of Dawn could move, the smaller craft fired. A narrow beam of white energy struck the shields, and the whole ship shuddered. "Minimal damage," Taver reported. "But they're locking weapons again." Syra's voice cut through the noise. "Boarding defense teams to the lower deck. Jace, with me." Jace blinked. "You want me in a fight with assassins?" Her gaze was steady. "You've fought Cardoon soldiers. This will be worse. But I need someone who doesn't fight by the book." "Lucky me," he muttered, following her out of the bridge. The lower deck was already chaos. The black ship had latched onto the Spear of Dawn with magnetic clamps, and sections of its hull were cutting open like the petals of some nightmare flower. Through the gaps came the assassins. They weren't Cardoon soldiers. They were smaller, faster, wrapped in black armor that shifted like liquid metal. Their faces were hidden behind featureless masks, and their weapons were short, curved blades that glowed faintly blue. The Valari warriors met them head-on, silver blades clashing with the assassins' glowing knives. Sparks flew, the air filled. With the sound of steel and death, Jace stayed close to Syra, his stolen Cardoon sidearm gripped tightly. He fired at the nearest assassin, but the figure twisted away with impossible speed. The shot scorched the wall instead. One of the assassins lunged at him. Jace didn't think. He dropped to one knee, grabbed a loose cargo crate, and shoved it forward. The assassin tripped, and Syra's blade took him through the chest. "You adapt fast," she said without looking at him. "Trying not to die," Jace shot back. The fight spread across the deck. The assassins were deadly, moving in coordinated. Groups, aiming not just to kill, but to reach a specific target. Jace noticed something. They weren't trying to take the bridge. They were moving toward engineering. "They're going for the reactor," he shouted. Syra's head snapped toward him, eyes narrowing. "Cut them off!" They moved fast, weaving through the chaos of the battle. Jace fired at anything in black. Armor that got too close. The closer they got to engineering, the heavier the resistance became. In the narrow maintenance hall outside the reactor chamber, they made their stand. 3 assassins came at once. The first went down to a blaster shot. The second locked blades with Syra, their weapons sparking. The third rushed Jace. He ducked under the assassin's blade and grabbed a loose section of piping from the wall. With a swing born of pure desperation, he smashed it into the attacker's helmet. The black mask cracked, revealing pale gray skin and sharp, needle-like teeth. The assassin hissed and lunged again. Jace sidestepped and shoved the pipe into the attacker's side. The alien staggered, and Jace kicked it backward into the bulkhead. It didn't get up. When the last assassin fell, the corridor was silent except for the sound of Jace's heavy breathing. In engineering, the crew worked frantically to stabilize the reactor. The assassins had planted a small, sleek device against the core. Taver arrived, scanning it with a handheld reader. "It's a disruptor charge. If it had gone off, the reactor would have overloaded." Jace rubbed his forehead. "So they weren't here to kill us. They were here to blow us apart from the inside." Syra's eyes narrowed. "No, they were here for you." Jace froze. "Me?" "They bypassed 3 easier targets to get to this deck. That's not random. Someone sent them because you're here." He stared at her. "Why would anyone send an elite kill team after me? I'm nobody." She didn't answer immediately. When she did, her voice was low. "You're human. And if the Cardoon know what I believe, they'll try to erase you before you can become a threat." That night, the ship's medbay was full. Valari warriors tended to their wounds in silence. Jace sat on one of the benches, his sidearm resting on his knee. Syra approached, holding a small metal flask. "Drink. It will help." The liquid burned his throat, but warmth spread through his chest. "You held your ground today," she said. Most recruits, Valari or otherwise, would have run. Jace gave a tired smile. "Running's never worked well for me. Trouble always finds me anyway." "Perhaps that's why you're still alive," she said. "The Cardoon expect predictable enemies." "But you're not predictable." Jace leaned back against the wall. "If they're going to keep sending people after me, you might regret bringing me on board." She shook her head. "If they fear you this much, you're exactly where you should be." 2 days later, the Spear of Dawn received a distress signal. It came from a small mining outpost on the edge of Vassari Rift. The message was short, full of static, but clear enough. "Cardoon attack. Need help. Civilians trapped." The Valari could have ignored it. It was outside their territory and Cardoon traps were common, but Syra didn't hesitate. "Set course for the outpost," she ordered. Jace found her on the bridge. "You think it's connected to the assassins?" She nodded. "If it is, we'll be ready. If it isn't, people still need help." When they arrived, the outpost was burning. Cardoon war drones patrolled the sky, their engines glowing red. On the ground, soldiers moved between smoking buildings, rounding up survivors. Sira turned to Jace. "You're with me on the ground. This time, you lead." Jace blinked. "Lead? Your soldiers are better trained. Trained to fight Cardoon the Valari way," she said. "The Cardoon know that way. They don't know yours." They landed in a rocky clearing outside the outpost. Moving quickly through the shadows, Jace studied the enemy positions. The Cardoon had heavy weapons aimed toward the main road, expecting an attack from the front. So Jace didn't use the main road. Instead, he led the team through the collapsed mining tunnels beneath the settlement. The air was thick with dust, but they emerged inside the outpost, right behind the Cardoon patrols. In the chaos that followed, Jace's plan worked. The Valari warriors struck from the shadows, taking the Cardoon by surprise. Civilians were freed and led to the waiting dropships. One Cardoon soldier spotted Jace and charged, swinging a heavy plasma axe. Jace rolled aside, grabbed a broken support beam, and jammed it into the soldier's legs. The alien fell, and Jace's blaster finished the job. By the time the last prisoner was aboard the dropship, the Cardoon were retreating. Back on the Spear of Dawn, Jace sat in the cargo bay, watching the rescued civilians talk quietly among themselves. Syra joined him. "Your plan saved them," she said simply. Jace shrugged. "Just did what made sense." "That," she said, "is exactly why the Cardoon fear you." He looked at her, frowning. "You keep saying that like I'm supposed to believe I matter in this war." She held his gaze. "You will. And when that day comes, the galaxy will see what humans are truly capable of." Jace didn't answer, but in his chest, he felt that spark again. A spark that, maybe, could grow into fire. The Spear of Dawn drifted through a cold stretch of space, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon. Commander Sierra Valen stood at the center of the briefing room, a holographic display of a massive planet spinning slowly before her. The planet was dark, its surface marked with sprawling industrial zones and deep pits. Thick clouds of smoke covered most of the land. It looked dead, except for the faint glow of cities near the equator. "This," Syra began, "is Draloth, one of the largest Cardoon slave worlds. Millions are held here, including—" She touched a control panel and a smaller image appeared. "Humans." Jace Rourke stared at the display. The image showed a fenced compound filled with worn-down figures. Even at this distance, he could see their posture, their thin frames, the way some of them kept glancing upward as if still searching for hope. "How many?" Jace asked. "Rough count. 2,000, Syra replied. "The Cardoon will soon send a fleet to transfer them to work camps deeper in their empire. Once they leave Draloth, they'll vanish forever." Jace's jaw tightened. "Then we take them before that happens." Syra looked at him. "Exactly. But this will be dangerous. Draloth is protected by planetary shields, orbital defenses, and ground patrols. If we go in loud, they'll execute the prisoners before we reach them." Tavor, standing beside the display, pointed to a narrow canyon leading toward the slave compound. "Our plan: infiltrate through this route, disable the shield generators, then signal the Spear of Dawn to bring in transports." Jace studied the map. "How many people on the strike team?" 6, Syra said. "You, me, Tavor, and 3 of our best." Jace gave a dry laugh. 6 against an entire slave world. Sounds about right. They launched at night under the cover of Draloth's thick cloud cover. The drop shuttle was silent, its black hull blending with the darkness. Inside, Jace checked his weapons, a modified Cardoon sidearm, a compact rifle, and a blade strapped to his leg. He also carried something else, a small toolkit. Experience had taught him that tools often saved lives more than guns. Syra sat across from him, her armor gleaming faintly in the dim light. She didn't speak, but her gaze was fixed and determined. The shuttle touched down in the canyon without a sound. The air outside was heavy with smoke and dust. The only light came from the faint glow of the cities far away. They moved quickly, hugging the canyon walls. The ground was uneven, covered in loose stones. Every sound seemed too loud. Halfway through the canyon, a Cardoon patrol appeared. 4 soldiers with heavy rifles. The team froze. Jace whispered, "Let me." Before the Valari could object, he moved toward the rocks, picking up a fist-sized stone. He threw it into the shadows behind the patrol. The Cardoon turned instantly, weapons raised toward the noise. That was all the opening the strike team needed. Syra moved first, her blade flashing in the dark. Tavor and the others followed, striking fast and silent. When the patrol was down, Syra gave Jace a quick nod. "Good thinking." They reached the shield generator complex just before dawn. The structure was tall, covered in antenna arrays, and humming with energy. Dozens of cables ran into the ground. 2 Cardoon guards patrolled the main entrance. Jace crouched beside Syra, studying the structure. "We can't blow it up. The explosion would draw the whole city." Syra nodded. "Then we shut it down quietly." Jace pulled the toolkit from his pack. "Give me 5 minutes." He crawled toward a service hatch at the base of the tower. The lock was Cardoon tech, but the principles were familiar. Pressure, pins, a magnetic seal, and a bypass circuit. In 2 minutes, it was open. Inside, the hum of the generator was louder. The air smelled of ozone and burning metal. Jace moved carefully, tracing the power lines until he found the main control node. He pulled 2 wires, twisted them together, and attached a small device from his kit. It was something he'd built weeks ago from spare parts, a power loop inducer. When he activated it, the generator's lights flickered, then went dark. Outside, the distant shimmer of the planetary shield faded. Jace rejoined the team. "Shield's down." "Then we move," Syra ordered. With the shield gone, the path to the slave compound was open. The team advanced quickly, but as they neared the outer fence, alarms began to blare. "They know we're here," Tavor said. "They know someone's here," Jace corrected. "Let's make them think it's more than just us." He broke off from the group, planting small signal beacons in the dirt at different points. Each one emitted short bursts of static and false gunfire sounds. Within minutes, Cardoon patrols were splitting up, heading toward the false signals. By the time the team reached the fence, only 2 guards remained. Syra struck first, her blade slicing through one. Jace tackled the other, driving him into the dirt before knocking him out with the butt of his rifle. They cut through the fence and entered the compound. Inside, the prisoners stared in shock. Many stepped back, afraid this was some new Cardoon trick. Jace pulled off his helmet, revealing his face. "We're here to get you out," he called. "We have ships waiting." The reaction was slow at first, then one human stepped forward, a tall woman with a thin scar across her cheek. She studied Jace, then looked at Syra. "You're Valerie," she said, voice sharp. "Yes," Syra replied. "But today we fight for you." The woman's gaze softened just slightly. "Then, let's move." The escape was chaos. Jace organized the prisoners into small groups, assigning them to the Valari warriors for escort. The first group reached the canyon without trouble, but by the time the second group moved, Cardoon reinforcements were closing in. Blaster fire lit up the compound. Prisoners screamed and scattered. "Keep them moving!" Jace shouted, firing into the advancing soldiers. Syra fought beside him, her blade a blur of silver in the smoke. But there were too many enemies. The Cardoon were pushing them back toward the fence. Tavor's voice came over the comm. "We need more time! The last transport isn't here yet!" Jace scanned the compound, his mind racing. Then his eyes landed on the central power tower, the one controlling the compound's floodlights, gates, and automated turrets. "If we take that out," he said to Syra, "we can slow them down." "It's too far," she replied. Not if I go alone. Before she could stop him, Jace was moving, weaving through debris and blaster fire. He reached the tower, scrambled up the side, and yanked open a maintenance panel. Inside was a tangle of wires and circuits. He didn't bother being precise. He grabbed his blade and slashed through the main power conduit. Sparks exploded around him, and the compound went dark. The sudden blackout caused confusion among the Cardoon soldiers, and their advance faltered. Back. At the fence, Syra used the moment to push the last group of prisoners through. "Jace, get back here," she called over the comm. He started toward her, but then he heard it, the deep, rumbling sound of engines. Cardoon drop ships were descending toward the compound. He looked at the prisoners, at the Valari trying to hold the line, and he knew there was no time. Jace ran to the central reactor of the compound. It was small compared to a starship's, but powerful enough to destroy the entire area if it overloaded. He opened the control panel and began pulling wires, rerouting power into the overload circuits. His hands moved fast, almost on instinct. Over. "The comm!" Syra's voice was sharp. "What are you doing?" "Buying you time," Jace said. "Get them out." "You won't survive," she replied. Jace smiled grimly. "Wasn't planning to." From the canyon, Syra saw the first Cardoon dropship land near the compound, and then, a heartbeat later, a blinding explosion lit up the night. The shockwave rolled through the canyon, and even from that distance, she could feel the heat. The Cardoon reinforcements were gone, and the path to space was clear. She didn't speak as they loaded the last prisoners onto the transport. Hours later, aboard the Spear of Dawn, the rescued humans and other species sat quietly in the cargo bay. The mood was heavy. Jace hadn't returned. Then, as Syra stood near the ramp, the comm crackled. "Need a ride?" came a familiar voice. Syra's eyes widened. A small escape pod drifted into view, its outer shell scorched black. When they pulled it aboard, Jace stepped out, limping, covered in soot but alive. Syra met his eyes. "You should be dead." "Yeah," he said with a tired grin. "Guess the Cardoon aren't the only ones bad at predicting humans." The battlefield stretched far into the distance, littered with the wreckage of ships and the bodies of those who had fallen. Smoke hung heavy in the air, and the ground trembled with the echo of distant artillery. The war had reached its peak. Kalen, the young human warrior, stood at the command post, scanning the horizon. His armor was dented and scorched, his sword nicked from countless battles. He had survived more fights than anyone had expected, but he knew this was the final push. General Vera approached, her alien eyes glowing with determination. "The enemy's main force is gathering at the ridge. If they break through, the city is lost," she said, her voice steady. Kalen tightened his grip on his weapon. "Then we hold the ridge." Vera hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I could send another unit." "You've done enough." Kalen shook his head. "I'm not done until they are." The alien general studied him for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. "Very well, but I'm coming with you. The march to the ridge." The march was silent. The only sound the crunch of boots and the distant hum of enemy engines. Soldiers from both species, human and alien, moved side by side. Weeks of fighting together had erased much of the old suspicion between them. Kalen noticed some alien soldiers glancing at him with respect, and a few even nodded as he passed. He didn't think of himself as a hero, but the way they looked at him told a different story. When they reached the ridge, they saw the enemy force, massive war machines, hundreds of armored troops, and banners snapping in the wind. Vara took position beside Kalen. "We hold here. No retreat." The soldiers raised their weapons. The enemy advanced. The final battle begins. The sky lit up with laser fire, and the ground shook as the enemy's heavy cannons roared. Kalen charged forward, cutting down soldiers who tried to push past him. His movements were precise, every strike fueled by the determination to protect the city behind them. Vera fought like a storm, her alien blade slicing through enemy armor with impossible speed. Together, they anchored the defense line, rallying others to fight harder. Explosions ripped through the battlefield, dirt and smoke filling the air. Kalen's armor cracked, but he didn't slow down. An alien war beast lunged at him, and he barely managed to roll aside, driving his blade into its chest. "Kalen!" Vera shouted. She pointed toward the enemy's command walker, a towering machine directing the assault. "If we take that down, they'll break." The dangerous plan reaching the command walker would mean crossing open ground under heavy fire. It was almost suicide. Kalen grinned. "Sounds like a plan." Vera gave him a sharp look. "You humans are insane," he shrugged. "And that's why we win." They broke from the line, sprinting toward the towering machine. Enemy soldiers spotted them and opened fire. Kalen weaved and dodged, his instincts guiding him through the chaos. Vara covered him, deflecting shots with her blades. They reached the walker's legs, the metal towering above them like a wall, bringing down the giant. "Climb?" Kalen asked. "Climb," Vara confirmed. They scaled the walker while blaster. Fire scorched the metal around them. Kalen's hands burned from the heat, but he kept moving. At the top, they found the hatch guarded by 2 elite enemy soldiers. Kalen lunged first, his sword clashing against alien steel. Vera struck from the side, and together they brought the guards down. Inside, alarms blared. Enemy officers turned in shock as Kalen charged through the cramped space, cutting down controls and systems. Vera planted explosives on the power core. "Time to go!" she shouted. They leapt from the walker just as it exploded, the massive machine collapsing in flames. The turning point. The destruction of the command walker sent shockwaves through the enemy army. Confused and leaderless, they began to fall back. Human and alien defenders roared in victory and surged forward, driving the enemy from the ridge. By nightfall, the battlefield was theirs. Aftermath Kalen sat on a piece of broken armor, catching his breath. Vera approached, her own armor battered but her eyes shining. "You did it," she said. "We did it," Kalen corrected. There was a long pause, then Vera spoke more quietly. "When I first saw you, I pointed and claimed you because I thought you were interesting. I never expected you would become the reason my people survive." Kalen chuckled. "Guess I'm full of surprises." A new era in the days that followed. The city rebuilt. Humans and aliens worked side by side, not just as allies, but as friends. Kalen found himself invited to alien gatherings, and Vera visited human camps often. The war wasn't over everywhere, but here they had won. And more importantly, they had proven something. That humans, with their stubborn courage and refusal to quit, could stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone in the galaxy. On the day of the victory ceremony, Vera stood on the platform beside Kalen. Before the gathered crowd, she raised her voice. "This human warrior is no longer mine alone," she declared. "He belongs to all of us. He is a protector of our worlds." The crowd erupted in cheers. Kalen smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. Maybe he hadn't set out to be a hero, but if this was the path his life had taken, he'd walk it proudly. Because in the end, this was what humans did best. They fought for more than themselves, and they never gave up.